to see that everyone came back from lunch. I was a bit concerned that moderating this panel would be the most difficult, but looking at the topic, it's definitely one of, well, they're all important, but it sort of concludes this very important day because we're going to be talking specifically about youth and the specific issues, concerns, and of course solutions that you see. I'm also really pleased to see 4 young women in front of me. I'm really happy that this panel is well represented because the other ones were a bit male heavy. So we're definitely going to make up for it with this one, despite the fact that you have 2 men moderating. And then I just wanted to share my observations as a lead-in to this panel. Obviously, I'm not from Belize. I've been here for 3 months. So it's been really interesting to me to hear about some of the issues, the concerns, and the solutions that the young people here in Belize are proposing. And it really struck me that these issues are not so different from the issues that youth are facing around the world in the different countries I've worked in and the country that I'm from. So I'm really excited, and I think that these kind of forums allow us to amplify the voices of young Belizeans, and also to add them to the greater global conversation that's happening, because I think a lot of our challenges that we mentioned, climate change, AI, technology, these are the things that youth around the world are really also grappling with. So I'm really excited to co-moderate this panel with CEO Middleton, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to reiterate what CEO Mine noted earlier this morning, that we're here to enhance the awareness of issues affecting youths. So we want to hear your views, as you've been sharing actively all day, and that your views will be presented by our Prime Minister at the UN 39th General Assembly, that the Prime Minister and Minister Fonseca, Minister specifically looking at foreign affairs and foreign trade, will be attending. And as noted earlier, CEO Mai and also Raul Salazar, resident coordinator for UN, noted that our population has a large makeup of youths. So it notes that youths are the future. And in terms of the future, I must note that the government of Belize, UN organizations, private us today, they are looking at entrepreneurship, they do apprenticeship programs, they do counseling for youths, specifically in Belize City, youths that have lost loved ones. We have 2 training institutes that are active, and I just spoke with CEO Katsim over at Human Development, and they're looking at after-school programs that they are currently doing at the hub. Also, entrepreneurship programs, they work with New Beginnings in terms of literacy, math, and English at the basic level. And this summer, they're looking at reading programs, art therapy, counseling, and other areas where they work with migrants also, in terms of that were trafficking victims and abused migrants, as well as Belizeans that are abused. And reading this week's newspaper, there's a anime boot camp that was launched in Orange Walk with the assistance of the government of Taiwan, and the note there was learning skills to earn. So I just would like for us to note that they are initiatives. So Deputy Director, we need to note at getting it out in the media and sharing the work that we're doing on our own, and also the work that we're doing with the UN agencies. For example, I signed a lot of approvals for summer programs countrywide. Barbering down south, there was boat captain, uh, theory, so on and so forth, countrywide. So I just want to note that we are doing some work and we need to get that information out. So with that, we move into our final session.
All right. I will come to you, Ms. Reynolds, first. And this is a really important question because I think it frames the whole discussion here today. In your own words, what are the primary concerns and aspirations of Belizean youth regarding their future? And how can policymakers address these effectively?
Good afternoon. In my opinion, some of the primary concerns of our youth in our beautiful country, Belize, would be the decline of the environment, poverty. I believe that the policymakers could step in and implement policies that teach our children financial literacy. Not only that, we need to collaborate with the sectors of the government that are controlling our imports and exports to ensure that the prices of our goods aren't constantly going up, because it doesn't matter how financially literate I am, if at the end of every month I have, say, $500 after I pay my bills, I pay my taxes and everything like that. If I have $500 and every month I go to the store and the prices are increasing, it doesn't matter how responsible I am with my money, at some point I still won't know how to manage that, because the prices of everything, they're increasing and I still only have this $500. When we look at the decline of the environment, I think we should start stressing the importance of safeguarding the resources that we have. One, we're a small country, and as a couple of my colleagues have mentioned earlier, we in Belize, along with a lot of other Caribbean countries, we're not contributing a lot to the greenhouse gases being released, but we are in fact experiencing the effects, the negative effects of these large corporations and industries. So we must hold on to the resources that we have and ensure that whatever we're taking out, we're putting back in.
Thank you. Thank you for that really thoughtful answer. I think, like I said in my introduction, poverty, the environment, the cost of living, these are really important issues that youth around the world are facing. And I also, I like that you hit on these points, because I think often there's a conflict, right, between poverty eradication and conservation or protection of the environment, because, you know, the two are not always seen as mutually going together. But I think there is a way, and I think through the bright dedication of young people, we can find a way to thread that needle to make sure we're conserving and preserving our resources, but also encouraging development and reducing poverty. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to, because this question is linked, and I will skip, actually, I'll go out of order. I hope it doesn't throw anything off, but I will go to you, Ms. Eck, because I see that you're studying public sector management. So linked to the first question, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think are the most important investments to be made to better support young people in Belize today?
Good afternoon. I like this question. We spoke a lot about education this morning, and I think particularly education in the aspect of vocational training, and this is particularly regarding people or students who have disabilities. We have vocational training in Belize, but we need adaptive vocational training, and more investment is also needed in mental health. This aspect of mental health would be positive programs, whereby I believe we could have programs that would build the confidence of young people, having them understand their worth, the importance of their contributions to society. Like today, we need more discussions like these, and not as structured as these discussions. Because personally, for me, preparing to come here was kind of intimidating. I don't know who I would have met, and honestly, I think my colleagues would agree that the structure was. You guys told us to dress smart, casual. That was like the only relaxing part of the whole thing. But the reality is, we need more discussion like these so that we could engage in our. You should come to us as young people. Meet us at the hub, meet us at the resource centers, ask us these questions, have more town hall discussions where we are in the community. You come to us. We came to you, which was awesome, but come to us some more. Okay, and then that reminds me, social spaces. We need a third place. Some of the young people in this room, they're either from home to school or home to work and right back. There is no third space or safe space that, there isn't enough, whereby we could go and just be creative, network with each other. We need spaces that fosters creativity, whether it's through music, art, what have you. We need more of those. And I want to stress to more green spaces for families, like more parks. We do have awesome parks. I love the parks in Belize. Belize City has the nice old animal park and different parks, but we need more of those. And lastly, support services for, I would say, for youths below the poverty line. This is particularly support services for young parents. These are new parents, and these support services could come in the form of parenting sessions that young or new parents could access. And these parenting sessions, in my head, would entail young parents learning stuff about money management, how to budget like a monthly income, how to distinguish with child development, and if they see their child not meeting specific milestones, they could, seek access for early intervention. And then another thing I wanted to mention too was the fact that these parenting sessions could also help parents to develop better communication strategies for raising young adolescent kids. So yeah, that is, I think I'm within my time, but yeah, I could go on and on and on.
Do you mind if I just add something to that really quickly?
This is what I like to. I wanted to comment on her stuff as well to add more, and we wanted that.
You can go ahead with what you want to say.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, I agree with all her points wholeheartedly, but there's one more thing I'd like to add. I think we should establish more economic opportunities for our youths, whether that's in the form of trainings, internships, or apprenticeships. There are a lot of sectors out there that don't require this lengthy skill set for people to excel in. And we have certain people that don't have the means to go out there and get the highest education. So in sectors like tourism and agriculture, we can have a lot of training sessions where the young people from the communities that are struggling would benefit greatly from. And to add to what she said about health, I think we should also make both mental and physical health more easily accessible, inclusive and affordable for the people, because we can't expect our youth to be performing up to par if they're not doing well mentally and physically.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alyssa Reynolds. So just to address one of your recommendations, I hereby announce that the University of Belize and the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Transport, specifically the Department of Youth Services, is addressing that economic availability by working together to provide the tour guide training program on UB's modal system. We just signed the agreement last week, so it hasn't been publicized as yet. So that will be available, and that's outside of the formal education. So it's a program like that you're speaking about. Thank you. So let's proceed. This question is for Ishel Gilhari, Galen University. Looking at national level decision making. How can we strengthen the participation of young people in national level decision making? Furthermore, what strategies can be used to ensure that the voices of marginalized and vulnerable youths, those populations, are heard and considered in national development plans?
Hi. Hi, guys. It is a great day today, and I'm glad that we're all here to talk about youths because that is what's important. I think we've gathered that from the first two responses. So, welcome. I am a representative of Galen University in the computer science department, as mentioned. And I am also here as a representative of youths, both inside this building and outside of this building. And to answer your question, to strengthen the participation of our young people, we must cultivate and strengthen relationships, not only on a national level making, but also in spaces that ensure that marginalized and vulnerable youth populations are heard. We have several strategies, and I'm glad to hear all the strategies that we've already implemented and are going to implement. However, here are a few ones that I believe are also important. We need to establish youth councils. Creating youth councils and forums is essential for providing structured platforms where young people, especially from diverse backgrounds, I think one of the things that we haven't mentioned is that Belize is a country that has diverse backgrounds. I'm sure here, if we were to go into it, we can see all the backgrounds. I am a mixture of Mayan, Mestizo, East Indian, but you can't really see it, but I am. And these councils should be representative of the different demographic areas because we know that not every area is suffering the same way. We need to institutionalize youth participation and develop legal frameworks that guarantees the rights of young people to participate in the decision making because it is crucial. A lot of the times youths are afraid because what is there to protect me? What if I say something that someone doesn't agree and I'm harmed in the process? We need to introduce the youth quotas that implement reserving a seat for these young people at national and local decision-making boards. I know it sounds a little bit difficult because, you know, we have a representative. They're here to hear our voice, but we're not going to be there. And in this process, as my fellow panelists said, I personally took the time to interview youths because this is the future generation. It's not just my voice, it's on behalf of all the youths that I got to interact with at least. And what they stated is, you know, I hear about it, I see about it, like that it's going to happen, that it was signed, but I've never heard of it afterwards. So where is that youth seat that is reserved for us? And then, like I said, the inclusion of the diverse representative. If we can have different parts of the district represented by the ethnicity, I think we're going to see a big diverse response, and it would definitely capture youth's attention, especially in those marginalized and vulnerable groups, because they don't know sometimes, especially the language barrier, depending on where the location is, how to interact and how to speak. So if we work on that, because the thing with youth is you need to work with us. I love that. I loved it completely, wholehearted, because at this age, we're not really going to find you. But thankfully, the universities help us with that. But it's all a work in progress, so that's what we're here for. So by implementing these strategies, I feel that we can create a more inclusive decision-making process that values and integrates the perspective of all our young people here in Belize. Thank you.
Is it possible for me to also comment on something as well as that?
Definitely.
I apologize, but I did
No, I
have
loved
that
it. Go
as
ahead.
one of my points for that question. But I would also like to say that first and foremost, before we delve into strategies, we must first recognize that there is a gap between the generations. We think differently, we operate differently, but at the end, we all need to come together. And so, like my colleague said before, we need to go to the young people. So yes, there are a bunch of things like youth councils, but if you ask any average child, they'll be like, oh, that's boring. I don't want to go there. I don't want to attend there. So what I say, first of all, for our children who have access to things like social media, like for example, to the youths here, how many of you watch news almost every single night? Oh, that make me look bad. Anyways, But versus the number of you who probably logged into social media or watched TikTok or Instagram today, how many of you? Well, I remember coming out of high school, I didn't really like to watch news. So I don't know if you guys know about the Belizean meme pages that we have, but those are extremely informative for me. So I believe that if we have different things that engage our students and our youths online, that would help. And for those of them that are disadvantaged, I believe that to go back to that, for example, we have the Free Palestine movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, because everything nowadays is digitalized because we're going to the future. And that way we can get a spread of information faster throughout the country. And for our youths that are disadvantaged within, let's say, rural areas, I say we need more interactive stations. Like, let's say, for example, that somebody just gives out a brochure. More than likely, our youths are not going to read that. But if you have something like a digital kiosk or like some interesting looking 3D model in, like, let's say, almost every single constituency, us as people, we're nosy. We're going to want to know what's going on in our country. And that's the way that you drive in the youth, and that's the way that you get them to join the youth councils. Thank you.
I'd also like to add to that and say that we can use the youth, because like she said, a lot of us won't tune into the news or try to join these parliaments because they seem boring. We could use some of the other youths to get a larger amount of youths engaged. We can use the youth media. A lot of us aren't really on Facebook much, but we do use TikTok and Instagram a lot. So we get some of the youths to speak up about these issues. One, because if another young person sees someone their age speaking on these issues, they'll be inspired to engage, and they themselves will be able to take up the torch to pass on whatever message they got from the media that we put out, because we're more likely to interact with something if we see someone like in our same age group speaking about that.
And one last comment to that. I believe that we need to make media or information more accessible, whether in Braille, sign language, live streaming. All of this should have been, somebody should have been interpreting this in sign language for the people out there who use sign language. But yes, I come here with my personal cause, and I hope to get my message across. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. And now a question for Ms. Cameron Rayburn from SJC. JC. Elimination of poverty. Can poverty be eliminated within your lifetime in Belize? Furthermore, what programs should government implement to eliminate poverty for future generations?
Well, to that I say poverty in general is a really complex problem, and especially to eliminate it within one person's lifestyle, and in a developing country like Belize, there are a bunch of obstacles. So nonetheless, I believe through maybe some comprehensive programs and sustainable growth that we possibly can. But first of all, we must address that there's a prevalence of a crab mentality, especially in Belize and the Caribbean. I'm not sure if any of you know exactly what this term means, but a crab mentality is basically where people, or average people, who are all at the bottom together, are all trying to get out of this bucket. And because they're all trying to get out, they're trying to trample over each other and pull each other down. And so with this, we see more elites in our country. All the power is being concentrated in them. So while we're scrambling, fighting at the bottom, they're perfectly fine. And in order to combat poverty in our country, I believe it will take a huge investment from these elites in order to make sure everyone makes it out of the bucket. As in 2018, the Statistical Institute of Belize said that 52% of our population was poor. So that's 1 out of every 2 people. Can you imagine that? So in order to combat this, first of all, we need more educated people. Specifically, I'm saying we need universal access to quality education, at least to the secondary level, and especially in rural areas. Because, for example, I'm not exactly from a rural area. I'm from San Pedro, but my parents wanted me to go to a high school in Belize City because they said the quality of the education is better there. I'm not saying that, I'm saying what they said. So we need to make sure everyone has access to that, because the Statistical Institute of Belize, okay, in primary school, we're starting at 89.6% of our kids starting in primary school. That number immediately drops to 56.5% in secondary school. And that's not even the amount of people that complete it. The people who complete it are 23.1% out of that. And out of that 23.1%, only 16.7% actually have tertiary degrees. Which brings me to my second problem. Even if we invest so much into education, these investments risk falling short if we do not address the employment problem in Belize. So even with these prestigious degrees, most of the times people have a problem with finding jobs. They're either overqualified for the job, overworked, and underpaid. So the most common job you'll see around is probably at a call center. Recently, the city council partnered with Peak Outsourcing, I believe, a BPO, in order to create more jobs. But even one of our news outlets commented that while BPOs do provide more jobs, young people are faced with the alarming possibility that it may be the only decent job they can get, no matter their field of study. And I will admit, there's nothing wrong with working at a call center, but we need more opportunities than that. So what I say is that we need the emergence of new industries. Specifically, I would like to see something in manufacturing, because I recall the sugar crisis. Why is it that we're exporting our raw product instead of and buying it right back? Why is it that we cannot manufacture it in our own country? Additionally, I say we need more, perhaps, international partnerships in order to foster a better business environment and attract more job opportunities for our people. I lost my face right now. Finally, I will say, even if we have the educated people, even if we have the people with good jobs, we need to train them on how to spend their money. Honestly, I never knew how hard it was to budget until I started living on my own. So I'm a college student, and I used to travel back and forth to San Pedro to come to Belize City, but now in college I'm living on my own, so I have a little budget. And once the budget done. And I don't think a lot of people realize how expensive gas is. Like, I never thought gas was expensive till I had to buy it. But what I'm saying is, that we need financial literacy programs in order to empower people in how to better invest their money. Because even if they're earning it, and they're rightfully earning it, if they're not investing it in the right place, the poverty problem will only continue. So undoubtedly, and in conclusion, in order to build a brighter future for Belize, we first of all need educated individuals with jobs they rightfully deserve, and educated individuals that are investing money in the right places. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
To add to that, there is a British politician, Sir Keith Joseph, that coined the term the cycle of deprivation. And as my colleague said, without adequate education, you can't find adequate jobs. And even so, the cycle of deprivation begins from health. If you're not healthy enough to go to school, you're not going to be qualified enough to work. You understand? So there is much to be said on the other end of this spectrum, whereby there is the issue of homelessness in Belize. The reality is that we have the data that I found wasn't sufficient for my what I wanted to really say, but I know that between 2013 and 2023, about 400 people had access mental health services from the Mental Health Resource Center, and of that, majority of them were men, and that speaks to the fact that there aren't enough mental health support services for men. And in reviewing and comparing the questions from panels 1 and 2, the questions in this panel are more leaning towards empathy, and this is where I'm seeing a lot of the ladies. We are dominating this panel, and We need to recognize that men need safe spaces too, to express their concerns, to safely say, you know what, I am not feeling well, and we, in our society, we expect men to lead and provide. How would they lead when they're trying to battle these daily issues of finding the basic thing to, basic needs? How would they lead a family like that? So we need that mental health the more mental health services for men. Furthermore, in that regard, we find that the mental health resource center was the main facility that, well, I found that that was the main facility that was sought out. In my heart and in my head, what I envision in Belize is a mental health facility that equips homeless people with skills like basic money management, again, basic trade techniques. Like this even applies to people maybe who have autism or ADHD who may become homeless. If they use or they acquire a basic repetitive skill like putting on a label onto a bottle or putting items in a box, that allows them to, and I don't know, acquire a job in a factory setting. That is something repetitive, something like that. And then the next thing was to allow these same homeless people to manage the daily the daily day-to-day task around the facility. Let them own that facility, let them be employed within that facility to empower them so that they could throughout the day do what they need to do with that income that could be provided to them. And this is something I feel like government could put into reality like right now.
All right, thank you. Thank you all very much. Yes, you have 30 seconds.
I think I already took 5 seconds. So with the remainder one, I love what she said, and I love that she also said we could look at it through a different spectrum. To type out what she said, the primary concerns, and to her one as well, bringing into call centers. That's not the only option, though we do acknowledge it because I saw exactly what you're talking about from the news. We acknowledge that, it's a stepping stone for our youths, but if you did watch the whole news clip, the minister himself stated, we need to ensure that our young people have more opportunities. We need more engineers, more agribusiness majors. But what exactly our call center is doing is somewhat stifling innovation, because then we might get stuck in like a rat trap. Because then you're repeating and you're not growing. It's not creative enough for you to grow. But what is important when it comes to poverty, for me, is investments go beyond education. We love that you're come back to Belize qualified, and we need to enable that our youth in education, those who return back, that they have a place to go. We need to look at investments that cater to putting them to the job that they deserve, not for them to come back and say, you know what, you did get the scholarship, but now you're overqualified, and I'm sorry, Belize just cannot pay for you. And then where do you end up at the call center? So I think linking all what we have here makes perfect sense, and I think that's my 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Courtney, that brings us to the end of round 1. I hereby inform that round 2 has been deleted. For a good purpose, so we could hear from the audience, we could hear from our participants online. We have 9 minutes in this session. So we do QA for 8, and I wrap up in 1 minute.
Okay, I think Sylvia, and then
Hello, Sylvia Bate from Galen University. It seems Galen is trying to dominate the question and answer. However, I would like to hear the climate justice question, and I pose it to all 4 of our panelists. Ladies, thank you.
So I don't know if everyone has the questions, or should we read them? Okay. So just for everyone, the question being posed is, what does climate justice mean to you? In what ways can young people effectively advocate for climate justice within their communities and at the national level?
Okay,
And
so
just keep it brief. Thank you.
I'll try. To me, climate justice means advocating for solutions that benefit both the environment and the people that are affected by stuff like biodiversity loss and climate change. For instance, the people who plant and live off the land, or are farmers. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
In what ways can young people effectively advocate for climate justice?
Okay, we'll start working with community-based organizations to host seminars and campaigns so that people that are interested in movements like this can advocate for the issues happening around the world. One, I think also the step before that would be education, because I can't advocate for something that I know nothing about. So have the youths attend seminars where they're informed about why we need to start being more aware and care for the environment, because we might not be here, even us as the younger generation, we might not be here to experience the negative effects of what's going on around the world, but our kids and our grandkids will. So we should take responsibility and take that action now, because unless our inaction will have a way worse impact in the future.
Me? Okay, thank you. So it's a wrap. So this was one of the more difficult questions for me. As my colleague said, it's intimidating. We had to research. And in the opening, Honorable Francis Fonseca mentioned climate change, but he didn't mention climate justice. And that is actually it was very complex for me to understand. So I hope that everybody leaves, especially with 4 of us answering with the definition of climate justice. So to me, climate justice in itself recognizes that it's recognizing and working towards correcting imbalances that exist with regard to climate change. The consequences are not equally distributed among all people, which is fundamentally unfair. The concept of climate justice itself, within the name climate justice, emerges from disparity. Not everyone contributes to climate change in the same way, and that is something that the other panelists also brought to their panel. You see, for me to understand it, I needed an example. And because there's lots of young youths, I see baby little scouts, I'm going to give an example, and I hope that they understand it. Take into consideration 2 schools. One of them has air conditioning, consuming significant amounts of energy, while another is struggling with unbearable classroom heat. This example in itself highlights the inequity that climate justice itself seeks to address. The one consuming the most energy are the ones least affected by the scorching temperatures, especially with the heat here. So here we are enjoying an AC, and sadly some are not. They are feeling the heat waves right now that Belize is experiencing. Like I said, to answer the second part, it is a very complex topic. And because of that, we need to educate our young people so that they gain awareness of its distinctions. You see, young people cannot effectively advocate for climate justice without knowing what it means. They know climate change, but they need to know what climate justice itself is and how to link the both together. Initiatives like Youth for Justice, led by Galen University's own Dr. Penados, has organized a team that empowers youths to advocate for the challenges addressed within their different communities. It's 12 leaders, and I love that each of them have mentioned that we youths, we learn by leading. I got to meet with some of the scouts, and one of them said, "I'm here because she's here." And that is what we need. We need to train a youth who's willing to be a leader and to take somebody under their wing. Youths can advocate effectively once they're informed, they're rooted in the situation, they're organized and engaged. They need to understand the issue of climate change deeply and how it links to climate justice, including the cause and its effects. They need to be rooted to stay and connect to the realities within their specific community. And we're in an era where technology is a strategy for us. We need to be strategic when it comes to finding the right audience or to being the right audience for the other youths. That way we can organize little grassroots activities within our community. In conclusion, our young people they occupy space. Their voices have impact. And I'm sure today I would like to think that my little youths right here can understand what climate justice is. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute per the final two panelists as our time
Of course.
is about to expire.
All right. So plain and simply, to me, climate justice means carbon emitting countries taking responsibility and finding solutions to global warming. To bring it back home, first, I believe, again, we should create more green spaces for recreation, and we're addressing climate justice and even providing spaces for good mental health. Secondly, I believe that we need more public education in this has to do with the garbage collection system in Belize. A lot of people don't understand the different stakeholders involved in how your garbage reaches from when it leaves your home to when it arrives to the landfill, and it's a lot that goes into it. I personally don't know how the rural areas do it, and I am familiar with Belize City only. Secondly, incorporating upcycling in school curriculum. That's there are creative ways that art could be used to, foster upcycling, and even venturing those upcycling items that are made for small business opportunities. I also believe that we should encourage youth in to apologies. Oh yes, through the recently established Association for Recyclers and Waste Management, I think there are good opportunities that we could engage with them to find out how a youth sector within that association could engage in more gardening and green space development. And lastly, I think that we could address issues like dredging river mouths so that the issue of flooding within the city could be alleviated, because this also ventures into vector-borne diseases, which affects minority population, especially people who live in poverty-stricken areas who don't necessarily have the proper housing to protect themselves from rain and whatever vectors they are to spread diseases. Thank you.
Had a whole long pretty definition memorized, but anyways, yes, ma'am. Okay, so we all know what climate change is. I'm not going to redefine it for you, and we all know it happens naturally through greenhouse gas emissions. And what we've learned from social studies class, we're the reason why it's accelerating through processes like deforestation, industrial processes, and just burning fossil fuels in general. And what a lot of people don't know, and the reason why they don't take climate change seriously, is because they're not seeing the entire disruption of ecosystems. Like, for example, I remember when my friend told me, do you know that the polar bears are dying? I'm like, what do you mean, do you know the polar bears are dying? And other things, as well as the social and political instability that we're bringing to vulnerable communities. And finally, we're even affecting ourselves because our health issues are being worsened by climate change. So to define climate justice, I say, first of all, it calls for the fair and equal consideration of all humans, as we're all affected by it, and the involvement of all humans when we're deciding the policies and the practices that we're going to take upon. Additionally, I believe that we should recognize those in marginalized communities, as my colleagues mentioned, specifically those in low-income housings and people, usually as people of color, people like us, who can't afford to live in the better AC areas. And overall, climate justice calls for solutions that benefit all. It can't be just one set group benefiting from the policies while the rest suffer. And in order to do that, of course, one, we need to educate people. Like I said, if you just tell people about climate change, they're not gonna wake up. But polar bears, the ice caps are melting, we need to do something now. Secondly, we need to go at their door. That's why I especially love things like this, because we're talking straight to the policymakers. And finally, what I say is that we all need to take sustainable actions ourselves. Yeah, we're talking about climate change, that, the other, but how many times do you go up and down, up and down, up and down in your car when you could just walk? So I say that we all need to hold ourselves responsible as well.
Thank you very much. That brings us to an end. I'll do the...
Two more
Okay,
questions.
we're extended.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of hands, but I will hear.
So this question is directed to Ms. Cameron. So hey guys, economics major, finance guy. There was a lot of discussion about the BPO and call center industry. Now, I want to know about the money, right? You know, like Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank likes saying. The BPO and call center industry is valued at $400 million. What do you propose could supplement this if we want to, say, do away with it or split it in half?
Okay, maybe we can take the other one time and then.
Yeah, so this question is for any panelist that feels comfortable answering it, and it is call center related as well. So you guys spoke a lot about unemployment in Belize, and I think especially there is a lack of entry-level jobs. You know, when students are fresh out of high school or maybe sixth form, they want to get into the workforce, and you look at these job applications, 5 years experience, 3 years experience. It's not gonna work. The one option that we do have is call centers. And while it is nice that we have this as an option, I think the main issue that was not mentioned is that these companies are externally owned, and most of the income made by Belizean labor is being exported. So my question to you is, what could the government of Belize or the people of Belize do to create more locally owned entry-level jobs so that that money stays within our economy rather than leaving it?
I would like to open up with saying that they told me that they were going to do this to me, knowing that I'm a law major and I don't take economics. I haven't since high school. But what I will say to that is I understand what you mean. We need to replace the money that we might be potentially losing. And like I said before, we need to emerge with new industries. Where those will come from, you tell me, Mr. Economics. But I will admit, if we, that's why we're here. All of us collectively could make up solutions. So like I said, the immersion of new industries, for example, manufacturing. I know nobody wants to do manufacturing, but hey, at least it's not call center.
As for the second question, is it on? Okay. Yeah. For the second question regarding the supplementing of call centers, this brings me back to question 4, whereby we were asking about poverty alleviation, and I was talking about the rehab centers for homelessness or homeless people. In that regard, I wanted to also mention that while we could have the homeless people work at those rec centers, we could also engage people to be caregivers to those homeless people, or even more so, go engage caregivers who haven't necessarily completed higher education, maybe at a primary level. I know caregiving is a trainable profession, and anybody with a good heart and a good spirit could actually pursue that area and maybe even elevate into nursing or any aid whatsoever. So that's one way. I'm a social work background, so that's what I'm not bringing any economic or technical expertise in. That's how I would see we could supplement some sort of employment in Belize.
And to add to the second question that was asked about call centers and why it's like just the call centers, where what can government do? There are workshops. I think the Minister of Transport here.
CEO, please.
The CEO, apologies. Yes, the CEO here. He stated that there are programs that are extended. If we look at Beltrade, for example, they offer, some are, you need to pay. However, a lot of them are free. And it's a lot about youths personally putting themselves out there and willing to commit to it. So there are programs that are catered to you enrolling in it, joining it. And the thing with Beltrade is it fosters connections. So if you complete it, they can aid you in finding a job. That doesn't just lead directly to call centers. So possibly, to answer your question, there could be more opportunities for programs that you can enroll in that allow you to network yourself, because it's about networking yourself. The thing with call centers is that if you know English and you know Spanish and you're very bilingual, you can get it automatically. And that is why call centers have a high rate of youths in it. However, a lot of the youths that are in it, and we see it, the youths use it as a stepping stone. I'm working because I'm paying my education. I'm studying and I'm going to the call center. So it's a stepping stone with a mindset that after this, I am going to give back to Belize. I'm going to contribute to my economic development of Belize. So it's about networking yourself. Panel 2 was talking about using digital awareness, you need to know where to go, and it's right there. You just got to be willing to read more on it. So there's a lot of programs there. So I hope I answered, because I know I'm on a time. So that answers number 6.
Okay, those are the 2 questions. Just a quick note, in terms of the behavior that you're speaking about, in terms of the entrepreneurship attitude, when I did a trainer of the trainer program over at Beltrade in another lifetime, we met with Jewish trainers, and they noted from elementary school, preschool, they were learning about entrepreneurship. So it starts with a change in the mindset, the attitude, and then we go to the behavior. For example, adjunct lecturing at UB, UB had entered a entrepreneurship program in the Associate of Business Administration. SJCJC also have that program, and I'm sure the other institution has the program. As noted, Ministry of Human Development does programs and training on entrepreneurship, as our colleague noted. Beltrade does programs on entrepreneurship and training. They're currently doing the roadshow. I think COMI works with them, and the Department of Youth Services. So it starts with the mindset, changing the attitude. We're not sending you all to school to work for someone. You have to also think, I can be an entrepreneur. I used to tell the students, you're doing a bachelor degree in business administration with a major in marketing. You can do consultancies immediately after. Why? Because the marketing function has not been developed to the level it should be in Belize. You could do consultancies directly out of UB. So it's changing the mindset, then the behavior, and as noted, investment by the government in specific programs. So I just wanted to note that. And with that, that brings our session to an end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panel 3. If I had to sum up that panel in 3 words, would be drop the mic. That was a bombshell. Everyone motivated, but I'm happy we had this discussion. Now to summarize the key points and insights from today, please welcome Ms. Aisha Borland, Director of International Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I have a tough job to summarize on the fly. I mean, the final panel just finished a minute ago. But good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. And I want to thank everyone for their active engagement. I think we had some constructive discussions across the 3 panels. And clearly, the students were well prepared. They gave thoughtful consideration to their responses. And I think similarly, we had good perspectives from the audience, which helped to round out the discussions in the panels. And so I think one of the first takeaways is that there is high interest among Belizean young people in these contemporary matters. There is substantial awareness of the critical issues, and there are some deep concerns about the potential impact on their immediate futures. So I think in panel 1, the discussion cut across the 3 pillars of sustainable development. We discussed the environment, social, and economic development. The need for capacity building in the era of technology and digitalization was mentioned, but also emphasized in panel 2. And among the suggestions which emerged were the need to engage a wider group of young people, so starting even at younger ages, primary school, high school. Today our panelists were mainly from the universities, so an older group of younger people. There was suggested that we should focus, and in thinking beyond the SDGs 2030, focus could include mental health. That is already actually in SDG number 3, and a focus also on digital cooperation. One of the outcomes of the Summit of the Future will be a first-time pact on digital cooperation. So we are heading in the direction of some of the suggestions that you made. There was also the suggestion to address some of the barriers to youth-led startups. And sometimes we focus on scaling up efforts, but sometimes we also need to focus on maybe micro and small interventions that can be helpful as well. It's clear that young people have a grasp of the impact of climate change. We discussed some practical adaptation measures, whether they were resilient infrastructure and the need to invest in that, or scaling up nature-based solutions using innovative financing instruments like the green bond. Well, we are already doing some of that. We have the blue bond, but that is also debt. That's also incurring debt. So we had, at the same time, a good discussion on development financing, and I think the discussion aligned very much with government's approach and thinking. So Minister mentioned in the opening that we have successfully pushed for the inclusion of vulnerability in the consideration of the allocation of financing. That also was reflected in the panel 1. And finally, there were different views about whether we could achieve gender equality in our lifetimes. I think that was an interesting discussion, and noteworthy, there were different perspectives from the male and female panelists. But according to the UN, on the present trajectory, we're 300 years away from achieving gender equality. So not in our lifetimes, but we should consider it a challenge. It's a dare. How can we take different measures, policy changes, legal changes? There were some suggestions for legal protection, for breaking down the stereotypes of what we consider to be male or female careers, and for considering measures to include women in decision-making and in the spaces of power. So on the panel 2, we also had a good discussion about science, technology, innovation, and the digital cooperation. And I think the panelists challenged us to incorporate technology and digitalization across all sectors, so not just focus on a standalone, to mainstream that in education. So not just as a subject, but across all the fields in education. They also challenged us to promote the awareness about the wide range of careers that are possible in science and innovation, and the many applications of STEM. There was also, I think, a challenge to address some of the barriers, the access, cost, and capacity, digital skills that are needed, and making sure, I think throughout all the panels we heard, the need to include rural areas in our interventions on development. So that was across the 3 panels. There was also a suggestion to incorporate and to collaborate more with NGOs, because they already have so much experience and know-how in working in rural areas, and to strengthen our data analysis. So we're gathering data, but not always analyzing it and being able to draw conclusions from that. So I think the panelists in the panels 2 were well versed on how Belize is already using digital technology, science and innovation in areas of disaster response, renewable energy, e-commerce, and forensics. And I think the inputs from the audience on that panel highlighted the potential dangers and where we needed to be thinking about safeguards and legal protection. Now, I'm sure the panel we just heard, panel 3, is fresh in your mind, but the main concerns there were, I think, at the beginning, mentioned by the panelists, were poverty, environmental degradation, and cost of living. And I'm surprised by how much the cost of living resonates with young people, even in the ministry. This is one of the This is one of the concerns I hear all the time. But from young people who still do not yet have all the responsibilities that come with a little bit later. So I find it striking. But the suggestions in that third panel were to increase investment in education, particularly adaptive vocational training, to focus a bit more on mental health. That was also actually a theme across the three panels, a concern about mental health and the need for more supportive services there. The need for more safe spaces where young people could have discussions, where they could explore their creativity, the need for more green spaces, the need for more support services for young persons, especially young parents. We also had a very actually spirited and informed discussion about meaningful economic opportunities. I was very impressed by how much young people are aware of all the dynamics of the BPOs. So that was very interesting, and the concerns that were raised. There was a suggestion for establishment of youth councils. So I think we have some structures of councils for younger persons in municipalities, but national level and for older youth councils.
We're finalizing the legislation.
Right. So the sort of legislation and the coming initiative is in line with the suggestions that we're hearing in this panel 3, and some sort interesting ones. Youth quotas to ensure a representation, I think was also an interesting suggestion. And then new ways to provide the news that will resonate with young people. It was, I think, an important suggestion for consideration. So overall, I think the three panels were engaging. I noticed that no one fell asleep, as far as I could tell, even after lunch. And we have a wide range of age groups, so I think it was telling that everyone was yawned. So it's clear that young people are engaged. They're aware of the critical issues confronting the world and Belize, and they have many ideas and concerns about the future. I sense an optimism among you that some of the most intractable problems that we have been working on for generations, like poverty and gender equality, are solvable. So I think that's a good place to start from, a positive attitude that it can be addressed and resolved. So in the days and the weeks ahead, we will take your perspectives and try to incorporate them into a message from Belize that the Prime Minister can deliver at the Summit of the Future. The Prime Minister will speak on Monday the 23rd of September in the morning. It will be a webcast on UNTV, and so I want to invite all of you to listen live and see if you hear what you said. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Director Borland. Now, like they say, all good things must come to an end. For our closing remarks, we have Dr. Martin Coyar, Dean of Student Affairs at the at the University of Belize.
Good afternoon. All great things must come to an end, indeed. Thank you very much. One of the first things I'd like to say is how inspiring it was to sit in, at least on part. You guys got to sit in on most. Some of us at work this morning were tuning in as well. But in a time when sometimes the future can seem very bleak, especially for young people, it's great for us to get together and to give a platform for our current young leaders to demonstrate that which goes on in their minds and how they have already, I think, fortified themselves so that they can handle that future. And that gives me some inspiration. It gives us all some positive thought that things may not end up being as negative, as imploding, as as we often see or hear on the media. So I'd like to really acknowledge the contribution of all the young panelists who participated today for that. Let's give them our first round of applause. Honorable Francis Fonseca, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, Education, Culture, Science, and Technology, we really appreciate your being here all day and also your role in helping to make sure that this dialogue was able to be successful. Of course, along with Your Excellency Amalia Mai, CEO in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we'd like to acknowledge and thank our CEOs, CEO Mejia from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology, our CEO Middleton from the Ministry of Transport, Youth, Sports, our CEO, which other CEO is still with us right now, Kendrick was around earlier but may not be right here in the room right now. All the other moderators, and then of course our panelists, we'd like to say thanks as well. One of the thoughts also that comes to mind as we meet and try to bring closure to an event like this is how does this reflect what's going on with our other young people, our other students in particular at the tertiary level. And one of the things that we at the university do is we work on some key character traits and skills that we like to imbue in all of our graduates or all of our students before they become graduates. And we like to talk about putting out there into the world, regardless of whether it will be via call centers or directly into entrepreneurial efforts. But we want to put out graduates who are socially responsible. And activities like this certainly allow not only UB, but all of the universities who participated this afternoon to enhance that particular goal and objective by giving students an opportunity to do some research, to read a little bit, to think, to reflect on their classwork, as we saw excellent representation of that today, and in so doing increase their commitment to indeed trying to be a positive change for society after they graduate. And so we acknowledge that particular objective being met today. We all look forward to graduates who are also analytical and articulate. And we saw the work that graduates had to put in to make themselves, or to bring themselves to the point where they were today as they shared not only their ideas, their reflections, even some of them their philosophies. We were able to see that. You could almost tell which of the graduates were environmental majors and whether you did have some economists on the panels, etc., based on the passion that they brought to the particular topics that they were discussing. That practice and that exercise does indeed enhance all of us in education's ability to produce graduates who are truly not only analytical but articulate. And the more we do that through exercises like today's, the more our country benefits by ensuring that we are indeed accomplishing the overall goal of education, isn't it? And so that is, to me, one of the reasons why this was time very, very well spent. We also talk a lot about trying to produce graduates who are worldly, graduates who not only concern themselves with what's happening in our little corner of the country, which is the corner of the world, and we look closely at trying to find that match or that even blend between our economic perspectives and our environmental responsibilities. And it was very enheartening to hear a lot of the ideas coming forth from our young panelists that seem to reflect that exact principle and value. And so for those reasons, I would like to, if I dare, speak on behalf of all the universities who were involved in preparing for and in bringing and sharing the minds of their students, that all of us can rest assured and leave feeling a little bit more satisfied in the work that we do in taking care of the future of Belize. Some of my lingering thoughts for as we leave an exercise like this one is that we anticipate that this kind of conversation as well as this kind of meeting of the minds can hopefully launch more collaborations among the three players in the UN's outlook for the future and youth, and that is having government, academia, and the UN continue to collaborate, to work together, to hopefully bring around the kind of changes necessary for us to see a better world. And some specific ways that that may already be happening. We're starting to see more courses and new majors being offered, not only at UB, but at, well, certainly SJC. Galen is expanding its range of offerings. We're seeing it happening, and that is a good indication that we are already kind of responding to and maybe utilizing some of the ideas that our younger panelists were calling for. We're seeing new platforms being established for this kind of dialogue, and we want to encourage that in every opportunity that we have. We're seeing the spawning of more opportunities for meaningful action beyond the dialogues. And that's very important. I think of tomorrow, right out here at the foot of the National Assembly, the advocacy work that will be done promoting the passing of the Equal Opportunities Bill. If you haven't signed up to be there yet, you can still do so. We talk about new funding for research. I think of UB's upcoming Energy Center, which could address some of the specific questions that were posed rhetorically here this afternoon. We think of innovative leadership between, again, connecting the UN and the government, but perhaps being motivated through academia that can allow for more youth voices to have weight, an increased weight in decision-making and policy development. So with all of this image and this kind of outlook, I think that we can all leave feeling like we're a little bit better off than the time when we arrived this morning, or certainly that the outlook that we all had for the future is perhaps a little bit more bright this evening as opposed to how it looked this morning. And for that, I would like to thank all of the panelists. And so here's the time for bringing our hands together some more. In particular, from panel 1 on sustainable development and financing for development, Delvin Rakena from UB. And so let's acknowledge their individual contributions. Thomas Serut from Galen University. Miles Crichton from UWI. And Mariam Arebara from SJC JC. In panel 2 on science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation, Eri Palacio from UB. Delvin Santino from Galen. Yannicka Dorado from UWI. And Edward Nicasio from SJC. And our final panel, not to be outdone, Alyssa Reynolds from UB. Ikshel Gilhari from Galen. Berndina Eck from UWI. And Cameron Rayburn from SJC. Again, thanks to our UN partners, the Office of the UN Resident Coordinator, the moderators, our AdLib schools who also brought a lot of other young people to be part of the audience, the participating universities. And with that, again, it is my pleasure to say that we're now finished with this particular activity, but as the doors open, so will be our hearts for the next time we gather. Thank you so much and good evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koyar. Now, as we close, we don't go home yet. I want to see your cell phones. Now is the time to use it. Where is it? Can you show me? No one has cell phones? Oh, we're in big trouble now, Hero. Okay, great. So this time, all of us get to participate. I ask you to please scan the QR code, and we will do a survey. This will give us a feedback of how we did today and how we could prepare future events. So I guess we want to keep you guys a little longer, but we can't. Please make sure you